We empower girls to know, who am I? What am I capable of? And we ask that all the time. And then, what am I going to do with that capability? Part of what good schools do is break down the myths about what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. There is a great character who was depicted and illustrated during World War II, and her name was Rosie the Riveter. Rosie the Riveter was actually devised on the basis of an Ethel Walker graduate. I did think about this a little bit and ultimately landed on the words bold, complex, and inclusive. And those words represent action as well as feelings, and I think that characterizes Walker's very well. We're an all-girls boarding school, including that we have a middle school boarding program beginning in grades 7 and 8, even as we also have the more traditional boarding program in high school. But to be an all-girls school is unique. And I will say it's not the obvious option for most girls. And I'm sad to say that, but I understand that we still live in a world where so often girls and their families believe that to truly arrive and be accomplished, you have to make it in a man's world, and you need to prove that every day in a co-ed environment. Our philosophy and belief is that, in fact, it is a man's world. It is largely still designed by and run by men. And we hope to change that over time by graduating incredible kids who will indeed become leaders as well. But in the meantime, the way we know to equip girls with the means to navigate a world that is still largely influenced by males is to first give them time away from those distractions. And we love boys and we love what they're doing in their own growth. But at critical times in girls' lives, boys serve as distraction, and then ultimately girls as a response begin to pull back. Rather than lean in, they begin to harbor fear, a sense of disappointment, and they no longer take risks. And at a girls' school, and certainly at Walker's, both because we are all girls, but also because we are small and we know each other, and the teachers can say to students, I see you, I know what you're capable of, and let's try this, and I've got you if it doesn't turn out exactly the way you thought. But let's do it. And girls will jump, and they're so excited to try things because they're not looking over their shoulders wondering if they're going to be judged. And girls also judge one another, it turns out, when they're in an environment where they're competing for the attention of boys. And if we can eliminate that for at least a little while, then we empower girls to know, who am I? What am I capable of? And we ask that all the time. And then, what am I going to do with that capability? You can imagine that at an all-girls school, and I would argue it should also be true at an all-boys school, much less a co-ed school, the arts are strong. And they should be, because if you think about it from a couple of perspectives, arts on the one hand, say an artist, a visual artist who's painting or drawing, sometimes that endeavor provides a solitude and a thoughtfulness that takes students away from the fray of everyday, very busy communal life. And it's really quite beautiful to watch students learn or relearn how to just be by themselves and create. And that's an important life skill, not to mention that they produce beautiful things. And we have some incredibly talented performing and visual artists here. But the other part of art is that so often kids grow up thinking, I'm not good at art. I can't play music. And they're not understanding that just like any other subject, if they're willing to open themselves up to learning and possibility and get past that fear, they can learn how to read music, sing, draw, take photographs, and they may discover that it's the thing they love the most. And so I think that's part of what good schools do, is break down the myths about what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And I have to say, we're in a world where specialization is alive and well, and it's crushing kids. And they and their parents are sadly believing that these kids have to decide at the age of 5 what they're good at and what they're going to pursue singularly so that they can get into the right college. And we flip that on its head and say, tell us everything you love, and let's also look at the things that you wonder about. And let's take the time to introduce you to those. And it's not about the one thing. It's about the many things. And art very often is the invitation to begin that process. For a small school, we have a breathtaking number of options. And sure, there are things that someone may say, do you have cricket? And the answer is not yet. But we have a swim team and a downhill ski team, and we have a squash team. We have the perennial prep school sports like field hockey and lacrosse and soccer, as you might expect, basketball, volleyball. Dance is considered a sport here, and so is the winter play and the winter musical. So what we don't want is for students to try to do too much and then feel as though they haven't been able to really develop an acumen or the time to develop expertise. So if a student is in our theater production in the winter, she's not asked also to do a sport because she's already spending 2 to 3 hours a day rehearsing. But the point is, we have a broad array of options. And the other thing I would just say about athletics at Walker's is that for some kids, they're coming in very experienced and hitting the fields running, so to speak. For other kids, we're back to this idea of this is not about whether you made varsity, but rather varsity or junior varsity or even a thirds team when we have the numbers of kids interested, in which we are introducing, teaching, training, and then equipping kids to become more accomplished. And I can't help but say that we just had an Olympic gold medalist in the Paralympics volleyball team representing the U.S., and they just won gold last weekend. Her name is Sid Satchel. Look her up, and we're so excited. And the whole school turned out at lunch to watch her live in the competition. So exciting times. We have an office of 2.5 people, so to speak, 2 full-time counselors and 1 support person. And they, in the most profound way, are working with our seniors, of whom there are 45 to 50. So those are great ratios. And they have the opportunity to meet with those students formally beginning in junior year. And they are with them all the way through their senior process. That process has never been more complex. The Common Application, the FAFSA, whether to apply nationally or internationally, wait lists, early action, early decision 2, all of testing, no testing. So what I would say about our college counseling office is that they've never lost sight of the importance of partnering with each girl and first helping her discover, who am I and what do I imagine to be possible? And now let's go explore and begin to construct a list of schools, because our number one goal is to ensure that every student has choices about which she is excited, and that to some degree she can get out of her head all of those people out there telling her top 10, top 20, top 50, Ivy League, NESCAC, Stanford or bust. That's all there. But we need to get them first to figure out, who am I? And that's what our counselors do. But they also have a very specific curriculum through which they take our students, beginning the moment they arrive, in very soft ways, and then becoming more and more formalized in exposure to the process and understanding of the process. And we do this for parents too, through written materials, newsletters, webinars. We're pulling our parents in, whether day or boarding, so they too feel heard, understood, and that they can learn about the process. And they can also benefit from our advice, where we say, there's not just one school. And if you think so, your child runs the risk of experiencing huge doubt and maybe disappointment, because the first thing she's going to do when she opens those letters or emails is look in your eyes to see what you think about her and whether she's good enough. And if you don't believe that she's capable of anything, regardless of what a school decision was, then we have failed. And that is our philosophy in working with our kids. The fun fact I'm going to share might require a little bit of historical research, but there is a great character who was depicted and illustrated during World War II, and her name was Rosie the Riveter. And this image was of a woman with her hair tied back and big muscles, and she was clearly at work as a mechanic, effectively in a factory. And Rosie the Riveter was actually devised on the basis of an Ethel Walker graduate. And this was in a time during World War II when the men went off to war, and the women needed to step into industries in order to keep things moving economically and to provide supplies. This image of a Walker's graduate who was in fact a real person, who shows strength and courage And actually, women never left the workplace after that. It's a very powerful story for us.